Is Sunday, July 19th, and we're going to get straight to our first guest because we have breaking news this morning. 2 American troops are dead and 1 is missing after Iran struck a base in Jordan. The U.S. launched counterattacks overnight to, quote, swiftly punish Tehran.
16 American service members have now died in this conflict. We are joined by Congressman Marlin Stutzman, Republican of Indiana. He represents the 3rd District and sits on the Financial Services and Budget Committees. Congressman, thank you very much for being here. And I just want to get your sense, first of all, of the state of play here and your sense of the administration's strategy going forward in this war. We've seen the president effectively rip up that memo of understanding. The ceasefire is off, and we've had 7 straight nights of tit-for-tat strikes. Where do you see this heading?
Yeah, Christina, David, good morning. Great to be with you both. Yeah, we're going to continue to see this sort of behavior, apparently, by the Iranians. We thought that the MOU was a good step forward. We know that the Iranians are challenging and difficult to work with. They're zealots. They are true believers. They've obviously killed over 1,000 Americans in the last 40 years. They've been at war with us. And now President Trump has finally said enough is enough, and especially with the threat of a nuclear bomb, that's the steps that we have taken, and I think they're the right steps. In this case, it's tough because the IRGC is still in control in Tehran. But how do you flush that out? How do you have a regime change? I believe there has to be a regime change because until this regime is gone, we're going to continue to see this. They know their power comes from their ability to sell oil and gas through the Strait of Hormuz, and that's why the struggle over the strait is so important, and that's why we have to win it. So there is going to be this back and forth, but I think President Trump, it's going to be more of a slow burn where you just keep economic pressure on and you keep military pressure on, and hopefully something breaks on the inside.
Do you think that needs to be reemphasized as a goal? It's a little bit unclear what the goals are at this time, but at the onset of this conflict, the president said he did want regime change in Iran. He's backed off that a little bit and said so much of the leadership was taken out. The guys who are there are a little easier to deal with. That seems clearly for the Americans to be not the case. Should regime change be the stated goal of this new wave of this conflict?
Well, I think it should be. But again, when you're sitting at the table with negotiators, you hope that there's somebody at lower levels of rank that are starting to move up because the upper echelon of the regime have been toppled, killed, and taken out. And so you hope somebody is going to use some sort of common sense and say, you know what, maybe we should adjust here, and hopefully we can save, the IRGC, and they can somehow save their control in Iran. But again, like I said, they're zealots. They are willing to die for their beliefs. These are a very different sort of religious fanatics. They are not giving up control very easily, apparently. But somebody on that inside of the IRGC needs to start saying, look, we can survive here and keep control. And President Trump is willing to do that. I prefer to see a complete regime change and a new government and let the Iranian people have their country back. But that's why this economic pressure, military pressure, hopefully causes someone to break inside and start to think rationally rather than continuing to fight. I mean, attacking Jordan shows the Middle East and shows the world that their problem is not just with Israel or with America. They're willing to attack Bahrain, Jordan, UAE, and other countries in the Middle East as well.
Sitting with them at the table, I want to stick with that point if I could, because we're hearing from Iranian leadership that they have no appetite to go back to the table now. They're saying that the U.S. walked away from this memo of understanding, which I know you praised it at the beginning. And they say, why would we go back? Why would we want to have talks with the U.S.? As you look down that path, the diplomatic path, how foreclosed does it seem to you? What's going to get these 2 parties back to the table?
Well, again, the reason that the MOU was broken because they were attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranians. I mean, I tell you, President Trump gives these guys more chances than what they deserve, because he wants to find a solution here. He wants to find a Strait of Hormuz that's safe for commerce. It's good for China, for their energy supply. It's good for Europe. It's good for the United States. It's good for everybody. In fact, it's good for Iran if they would just realize it, that if they had a safe strait where ships could go in and out, they would have the ability to sell more oil and gas. So in the long run, what's going to happen here, David, is that buyers of oil and gas are starting to look elsewhere, which actually benefits the United States because they want to buy a safe place for their buyers. And so the sellers are starting to say, look, we're going to go somewhere else and buy rather than buying from the Persian Gulf because it's too risky. So in the long run, this economic pressure, I think, is what's going to really hurt the Iranians, and it'll benefit other countries like the United States. And so the pressure needs to continue to be put on there. President Trump, I think he would always negotiate with them if they're willing to do it in good faith.
To that end, about economic pressure, President Trump, Truth Social, I'm not sure that's a verb, but that's what we're going with this morning. Truth Social this morning, Republicans should add Iran to the Russian sanction bill. That's what Lindsey wanted to do, and it was going to happen. Important, President Trump. Is that something you think should happen? Would that compromise the passage of that Russian sanctions bill if Iran was added to it?
Well, I think we should. As Congress, we should take that action, knowing that the IRGC has broken the MOU and that they are the ones that continue to fire, rockets and weapons at allies and others in the Middle East. They have shown that they are going to attack ships in the Strait. They're still at war, and until they sit down at the table and say we're going to act like a realistic adult country here and try to find a path forward, I think that we need to continue to put that pressure on. And sanctions is one of those ways that Congress can act to do that.
Let me stick with kind of the financial services world. Of course, you're on the Financial Services Committee, and there was this kind of extraordinary piece in the Wall Street Journal this week about your colleague from Florida, Anna Paulina Luna, looking at the prediction markets. And it sounds like she tipped off one of her friends or associates that President Trump was going to pick J.D. Vance to be his running mate. Said friend placed a bet as a result of that, made a wager as a result of that. And I guess there were some regrets on one of their parts that the bet wasn't larger. But I want to ask a broader question about this. This is kind of a moment at which we're looking at this kind of new financial marketplace, and there are a lot of questions about what limits should be placed, particularly on members of government, people in Washington in particular. And I'm curious, are you in favor of more rigorous standards or more rigorous rules being applied to, yes, lawmakers, their staffs, members of the administration and government more broadly, as we've seen more and more bets being placed on, yes, movements in politics and issues of national security as well?
Yeah, David, the prediction markets, obviously being more new to all of us, are ones that are going to have to have some sort of regulation. Of course, we have a lot of ethics rules already that we abide by, and in this case, insider information, I think should be treated as insider information. And so, whether it's with a publicly traded company that currently has insider information rules, I think those same rules should apply. I mean, we know that Martha Stewart was, of course, convicted of that, and so there's obviously ways that process can work through a judicial process. And so as prediction markets become more popular, and obviously these sorts of things happen, whether it's a streaker at the Super Bowl, I think worst case scenario, they don't get their the return on the bet if they knew what they were going to make happen was them and they were the ones manipulating the market. I think that's how we need to look at it. That's a manipulation to the market, and that it is a violation of some sort of rules that we probably already have in the books. We just need to make it applicable to the prediction markets.
So before we let you go, I want to know if you have any health updates on Mitch McConnell, if you believe the photos put out of him are genuine, and if you have concerns about whether he's able to do his job.
I do have concerns that he can really do his job, especially at a very difficult time when every vote counts in the Senate. And whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, we were obviously very critical of President Joe Biden when he had health issues, and we had concerns as the president of the United States. I mean, this is probably the oldest senator in the United States Senate that isn't able to perform his duties, and he needs at least to just be transparent. Let people know that he is not able to be, in the office. He's got health concerns. We earn the public trust when we run for office. And I think that matters even when we have health issues that, we just at least need to be transparent and let the public know. I know the governor of Kentucky has been asking for updates. Senator Josh Hawley has been asking as well, and others. It seems that he's, alive and recovering, but, we have seen this decline in his health for the last couple of years. And so that's why it's of great concern.
All right, I know a lot of reporters, myself included, have been asking as well. Representative Marlin Stutzman from the great state of Indiana. We appreciate you taking the time this morning. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.